Hello, I know that Fiona and Cowan have actually did a fantastic literature search. And in fact, what's really interesting about it in practice is what you find in practice is what the literature search actually tells you. So I will tell you some of that. So I'm going to tell you about the challenges that we've actually had, how it's actually been in practice, and I will spend some time. I think it's really interesting seeing the metrics and the data that you can get out of it, because for management that's actually really important. So a little bit of background, just so those of you who don't know us, we are a big provider of nurse education at Anglia Ruskin University. We currently have 1,500 pre-registration student nurses. We educate more midwives, student nurses across the east of England than anybody else. We're actually very good at it. I say that very proudly. And we've got outstanding fitness for practice for our pre-reg nursing programme. We also got an NMC commendation for our use of My Progress and partnership working with Health Education England. And in our QIPIF review, which is our quality performance framework, we got another commendation as well. So that's great. To give you an idea of our... I always put into the shame with this now, because when we look at Scotland, this is nothing. But we have 3 campuses where we train nurses: Peterborough, Cambridge and Chelmsford. And each of those campuses is 50 miles apart, and we have students placed all over East Anglia, but we don't have to get on planes to our students, which I believe that Fiona and Cowan have to do. So our students, if you're thinking you've got problems, have sympathy with the Scottish ones. And I think this is actually my favourite quote when I'm thinking about digital practice assessment, and a lot of things, is we often think that there must be a better way of doing things, but we're so busy running around that we don't figure it out. Here is Edward Bear coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs, but sometimes he feels there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping long enough to think of what it might be. Our C project, it's Sustainable Electronic Assessment. And when I say sustainable, we're not just talking about sustainable in terms of paper, we're talking about sustainable in terms of resources. We have to increase the number of student nurses that we're going to train. It's a government issue at the moment that there's a national shortage of nurses, and if we're going to manage those students in practice and able to provide them with excellent practice assessment and support, we can't be doing what we've always done, because the system will actually fail. So we actually have to look at a different way of doing things, and that's why we've called this the C project. And so in working with this project, there's a lot of people involved, and you're going to hear from some of those after I've finished speaking, because I think they're really important. We've been fortunate. It does cost money, and strategically you've got to think about this in practice, is it costs a lot of money to do this. And, you know, however much the app actually costs, and My Progress, you have to factor in your staffing. I'm actually quite expensive to employ to do this, and we started off the project with very minimal funding. And if you want to do it well, and if you're going to get this in practice, you need to make sure you've got specific resources behind that. And in working with this, we are working with all these people. So we're working with the NHS trusts, acutes and community. We're working with our independent sector partners. Students are incredibly important, and I'm working on engaging our students increasingly more with this. Mentors are one of the biggest challenges, because the students are in university, the actual tutors are in university, we have, you know, I said, we have 5,000 mentors in, I think, over 500 placement areas. That is the challenge. Tutors, our tutors, we've got some tutors here. Patrick Webb is sitting there. He's got 2 cohorts of students on. He's got more students on the system than any other, and he's doing very well with it. So if you want to know what it's like from the tutor, go and see Patrick Webb. Educational champions, we have actually 2 educational champions sitting there, and they link with our practice areas, so they're our go-betweens, so they can tell you a little bit about that. And then we've got the university management. So this is actually who we're working with all the time in managing this project. I think what I'd say is it is painful, and I'm not going to actually deny this. If you are going to do this, it is going to be painful for your students, it's going to be painful for your mentors. And I think the first thing that you need to accept is that pain. And it isn't an easy thing to do. And if I'm going to say what are the biggest issues you will have, is going to be about having the digital literacy and the digital knowledge of your students and mentors. And do not underestimate how much support they're going to need. On a positive note, this is actually really important because it is part of the NMC curriculum for student nurses to have that digital literacy and digital knowledge skills. And one of the things that Health Education England like about this more than anything else is we're not only training the mentors, the students, we're training the mentors as well. But be prepared. And strategically, the kind of things that you're going to have to think about in putting this in action is the cost. Governance is something that I think has been touched upon. And a lot of questions that you get are about governance of trusts, will they actually accept it? And you just need to think about this logically. You're actually collecting student nurse information about their practice assessment, not about patients. And you need to go in the right way and say there aren't any governance issues. NMC do accept it. We know that for a fact. You won't have any problems with them. We did have questions, and this reiterates back to the literature review we had. We had questions about infection control from practice in putting this in. But if you think about it, a tablet is a lot easier to clean than a paper document. So you have to think logically. Storage of tablets was a big issue, and where they're going to be stored in the practice areas. The NHS does have outdated computer systems, and that has been an issue. All our students have tablets, so they do prefer absolutely to use the computers to the tablets, and who wouldn't, because it's easier. But one of the reasons that we chose this system is it does give the option, and where the computers don't work, then we can actually use the tablets. And it's not the My Progress system, it's what we found is quite a lot of the trusts have versions of Internet Explorers that are so old. And actually the trusts need to think this is a critical issue for them, because other critical systems will actually fail within the trust if they don't update their systems. So we can suggest to use different browsers, but we don't have any control over that. And those digital literacy skills, and actually we have to think about how we help through those. So that book manual is quite good, I think. You know, if I give somebody a digital manual about digital things, they don't understand digital, I've got another problem, haven't I? So it's having lots of different ways of supporting students, and lots and lots and lots of training. One of the things that you need to do, and we have actually found from experience, is in getting people on board with them, you need to actually persuade each individual group about what's in it for me. So my advice to you is think about your audience and persuade them from different perspectives. Now, Health Education England love this. And the reason that they love this is the absolute governance of practice assessment. And it goes back to the fact of how do we know that the students complete the assessments on time? If we have a Beverly Allett in 20 years' time, how do we actually know, how do we find her practice documents? And they love the metrics and data we can get out of it. And as a university, any university has been asked for this information by QUIPIF, by NMC, lots of reviewers. So just show them the metrics, and they were sold very easily. And just to give you an idea of what the metrics look like, this is a graph, and we were talking about completion of assessments. So these are a sample of assessments that I've actually graphed out. So the mentor registration, where we collect their mentor details for the NMC register, should occur in the first week. And you can see that students are still inputting that in the last week. That's the blue line. The induction meeting should happen on the first day in practice, and you can see we've still got induction meetings happening in the last week. First formal meeting and mentor should happen in the first day. Those are being done in the last week as well. So what we get very clearly is we get that evidence about when assessments are being completed, and as actually already iterated, is that we've always suspected this has happened. Now, this doesn't make us popular, because we are now Big Brother, and actually we know what's actually going on. And like Aberdeen, we're not trying to be cross about this, we're just trying to think about it in quality assurance. If our students do not get their practice assessment on time, they don't have time to actually develop and get the best grade. And actually, if they're failing, they might not know it till the end, but they want to get the best assessment. So, you know, there's no point in just having, let's just complete this in the last week to get it as a paper exercise to be done. There's a reason why we need the formative assessment done in the middle point. And the way I've actually set up the assessment forms, we're continually collecting which placement area the students are in. So in the back end of this, I'm getting data about which placement areas are completing this on time, which are not, and I can begin to feed that back into the placement areas, placement trust, and actually say, have we got particular issues here? What support do you actually need? And this is the kind of thing that will benefit our students in the long run, but they don't necessarily see it now. So, and this kind of information is really exciting for us to work with to improve our student experience. The placement areas, you're going to hear from them in a minute. And actually, I am really privileged, we're really privileged at Anglia Ruskin to work with the most fantastic placement partners who support us wonderfully. And we have a really good working relationship. And I haven't had a moment's problem with my placement partners. They have embraced this with open arms and been as supportive as we can possibly imagine. And the reason why, and they'll tell you this themselves, is they have their own quality assurance structures themselves, and they need to collect this data for themselves. So they're interested, and we have very proactive partners. And it does help increase that engagement. And it's helping improve the digital literacy of their nurses in the placement area, which they need for skills as well. And I won't steal Addenbrook's thunder, but they've got actually good reasons why their nurses need digital skills at Addenbrook's. The student nurses, there's a lot more benefits to this for student nurses than the fact of completing their practice assessment. They're developing employability skills. Digital literacy skills are key employability skills now. It does allow inclusivity. We have had students who've had special learning needs, and I'll show you a quote from one in a minute, who've actually found this helps them. Tablets can do things like speech-to-text recognition. There are check charts so they can see progress of what's actually going on. Increased engagement with their tutors. They've got a secure record of achievements, so it won't be lost. If they lose their tablet, they don't lose their record. If it has been synced, it's still in the cloud. We as tutors can track their progress much more clearly, and with timesheets and things. And I just want to give you a sense of what that looks like, because you haven't seen it. And just to give you an idea of how we're working with this in practice. So we do have a website which has got lots of information on it, with our training resources as well, and access to the platform. And I'm just going to show you what the tutor can see. I'm going to show you a trial cohort, because I'm sure these students don't want to see themselves. So I'm just going to training cohorts. So this is what you get as a tutor. So we've got some training accounts, so you get to see all your students on your computer while they're actually out in practice. You can choose a cohort that you want to actually look at, and you can choose a student directly from that cohort. Or you can actually go on to and just view the student. And when you view the student, you can go into each of these assessments and see what they've completed. There are some useful stuff that you can see just to give you an idea. Framework completion report. I can see the green tick indicates that the student has actually completed this assessment. The actual number in brackets says how many times they've actually completed it. You can get individual reports, timesheet report. Oh, they've gone because we've stopped using them for the moment. But you can see assessments, completed assessments. And the other thing is that you can do, I can spend hours doing this and we don't have hours. In the progress and reports, you can bring up detailed assessment reports. And I don't want to do this because I'll bring up information about our current students which would be breaching their confidentiality. But I can choose dates, I can choose cohorts, and I can actually choose specific questions. I can find out what the whole cohort or the whole of the students' year group are doing for a particular assessment. Comes up as a complete spreadsheet of information, which is really, really useful. And just to give you an idea, this is one student actually sent me an unsolicited email just to show you how it can help accessibility with students. When I first started using the platform, I was adamant that it wouldn't be useful or functional for me. However, in around the second or third week of my placement, I began to get really interested in the platform. I haven't admitted to taking to the tablet at all. You'll find in the copy of my progress that I have used the space to write extensively in the reflection space using referencing to reflect and validate the work I have done. I have encouraged my mentor to do the same. Any meeting we have held, I have written up. She has gone through and I found it useful to check for understanding. I have dyspraxia, ADHD and OCPD. To be able to talk about how it is a useful tool to have a comprehensive assessment that's more fair. I feel that my progress platform does this, as well as gives the students a space to mentally expand and mental space to create achievable goals for me. So it does have benefits for your students who have extra educational needs. The mentors, we've talked about this before, and the other thing is that the mentors, it's collecting information for their triennial reviews. So mentors have to have a triennial review every 3 years, and what I found from practice is they often didn't have that record of the students that they'd actually mentored, and the sisters were even having to go through the registers to find out who they'd mentored for their triennial review. Now, because the mentors have their own site, when they come for their triennial review, they actually have that evidence there for their review. Also, again, with NMC revalidation, they have evidence of how they've mentored the students. What I do say to the mentors is this is the student's information. We've given you permission to access that student's information, but it remains the university and the student's information and not your information. So you mustn't remove it. Systems. There's lots of complicated systems in paper processes that actually take a lot of effort to go through. And actually, things getting papers flying around, it's much more efficient to use a digital version. And just to give you an idea of queries that we're actually getting up, things about that we've had feedback from the students is how we actually set the documents up. We learned that we needed to put them all together in a bigger document rather than having lots of individual sites. So there's issues about how we set it up. There have been some issues in the system functioning, which we've managed to iron out with a company. Timesheets were an issue because things that were going on in the university, and there was a bug which I believe has been corrected now. The process of completing the assessments, we do have some questions from students about that would happen whether they're in paper or not, and a general assessment questions. But the biggest issue is about digital skills, and actually things like syncing the device and being connected to Wi-Fi and not being connected to Wi-Fi. We do have questions about the size of tablets, storage of tablets and that kind of thing as well. Similar kind of things that we actually get from emails from mentors. The mentors did bring up professionalism. They brought up their triennial review in a positive way. They were emailing us to say this would help with their triennial review. And professionalism in that they were worried about students typing in front of mentor-in students. And just some final thoughts. The world hates change, yet it's the only thing that has brought progress. One must change one's tactics every 10 years if one wishes to maintain one's superiority. And this is not change, does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes with continuous struggle. So if you're going to do this, get your flak jacket on and your wide shoulder pads out, because you will be taking bullets. But it is definitely worth it. When we get complete buy-in, I think it's going to afford great advantages to our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean.